Welcome to my podcast. It's great to be back on Results, showing you some more tried, tested and proven ways. Today I wanted to play you a recording actually of a program that I put out several years ago that's got some fantastic content in it. It's called Raise Your Game, and I thought it would be really useful. As I'm recording this, we're probably the last main working day before Christmas, and we've got the new year to come and actually new decade to come, and I really think you'll take something from it. So without further ado, let me just see if I can get this to work. I'm sure I can, and really enjoy it, and I'll speak to you briefly at the end. Thank you ever so much for listening, and enjoy Raise Your Game.
Hi, my name is Steve Mills, and I'd like to thank you for listening to this month's Raise Your Game programme. The programme all about maximising your business and getting the very best return on investment from all your sales and marketing strategies. Last month's CD, my question for you is, did you use it? Because that's what this programme is all about. It's about producing benefits that actually work in real life. So if you think about what you're actually doing in terms of your marketing, the ideas that we discussed, what actions did you take? What strategies did you implement? And I'd be very interested to receive any feedback that you may have in order to try to improve the program in the future. I believe that education is really important, and one of the most important things about education is what you actually do with it. I have a system that I use in my car where I constantly look to educate myself. I actually call my car a university on wheels, so I spend hours every day listening to the leading experts in the world in terms of sales and marketing. This month and every future month's CD is going to be divided into 4 key sections. Those sections are strategy, online marketing, offline marketing, and sales. And the reason I've decided to divide it into those really key important sections is that I hope there's going to be something for everybody in the program. Just before I go into this month, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about added value. Many of you maybe received an email that I sent out this week regarding providing added value. Well, I'd like to add some value to the program, and I'm going to send you in the next few days a copy of a new ebook that I've written called The 10 Biggest Mistakes that Most Small Businesses Make in Lead Generation. So please take the time to read the book, because I'm sure it'll give you some real good insights into some of the things to avoid in terms of lead generation. My question to you at this point is, what could you do to provide added value? What added value strategies could you have within your business? What could you do to make sure that the service that you provide you're doing actually more than you say? You're providing a specific service or a specific product, and you're throwing something in, or you're giving some advice, or you're doing something extra to what someone's expecting. Because only then can you create real raving fans, people who are out there recommending you, buying from you again and again, and telling you and others how wonderful your business is. So, I'd like to start this month by talking about strategy. And I have a very important question for you. And that is, what will your business look like when it's finally done? When it's finally finished? When you've got to where you want to go, whether that's in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What does your business need to do to get you what you want in life? To understand that, the first thing you need to do is to know what you want in life, which is an original concept for many people. But what is your primary aim? What do you want out of your business? Once you've got a good understanding of what you want, then the next step is to define what the business needs to do to give you what you want. What does it need to turn over? What profit do you need to have within your business? How much will it be worth when you come to sell your business? Because the whole idea of a business is that one day you're going to sell it. And, even if you don't sell it, then really you've bought it yourself. You maybe pass it on to your children or whatever you're going to do with it. But the important thing is to have a set value for this business. Only when you've got that are you really a business and not just a person working busily in a job as a self-employed person. So when is that going to be? What's the organisational chart within your business going to be? And when I say this to, the average small business, what's your organisational chart going to be? Most people look at me slightly gone out. I do this, he does that, and, who needs an organisational chart? The key for this really is making sure that you have a good understanding of who's doing what within your business. What are you spending your time doing? If you're spending, 40% of your time in sales in your business, as an example, or maybe doing the books, then, you're really working at the bottom of that chart, spending 60-70% of your time in an area that is a fairly low paid area. And all that time, who's doing your job as the MD or the marketing director or the finance director, operations director? Who's doing all those key areas of business? If you think about most businesses, in fact, I'd say all businesses, we've all got three sections to our business. We've got finance, we've got marketing, and we've got operations. Most businesses, in my experience, are very, very good operationally because that's what they do, that's what they love. So a garage mechanic opens his own garage, a solicitor their own legal practice, etc. Believe him, because they're an expert in that area, they can run a business that does that type of work. And obviously that's not necessarily true. So we need to think about our organisational chart. Where do you spend your time, money and effort? The next section I'd like to talk to you about is the online marketing. And the media that I'm going to discuss this month is email marketing. This is an area of most people's business that they do some of. They do, an amount of email marketing, even if it's just on a sort of one-to-one basis. They email some information out to various people and they don't really maximize it. So I'd like to give you some ideas and some thoughts and ways in which you can get the best possible return from your email marketing. The first thing I'd like you to think about is your target market. Who are these emails going out to? How many of them are going out? What's your best market? And people say to me, well, I'm looking for a new list, Steve. I want to, market to more businesses. And I will always say the same thing. You've already got your best list. And your best list is 99% of the time is your current and past customers. So let's start there. Let's have a look at what you're doing in terms of your current customers, because that's a real key area. You want to make sure that you're maximizing them. So we need to think then, how often are we going to contact them? And a lot of people are a little bit reluctant to keep in touch on a regular basis. If you think about a current client and you think about a relationship, a business relationship is a little bit like a personal relationship. So I like to call our clients business friends. And if you've got a friend, then to me, you want to speak with that friend on a reasonably regular basis. A friend that I keep in touch with, once every 3 months through a newsletter is probably not going to have the greatest connection with me. A friend that I maybe speak with once a month may or may not have a strong connection. But when I speak with on, let's say, a weekly or fortnightly basis, then I'm sure we're going to be able to build that relationship. Now, clearly, we can't just build a relationship built on email. That is just one strategy. So you need to decide how often you're going to keep in touch with people. via email. And that could be once a week, it could be once a fortnight, it could be once a month. It depends on your particular style of communication. The big thing that I really stress is making sure that you do keep in touch with people. So you may have clients who are graded A's, B's, C's and D's and so on and so forth. So set yourself a strategy. How often are you going to keep in touch with your A grade clients? Is that going to be every week or every fortnight? And do the same with B's and C's and D's and so on. The next thing we need to think about is additional email names. Now, one of the keys, I believe, is making sure that you're not spamming people. You're not sending emails out to people who don't know you, they've never heard of you, and they've potentially got no interest in your products and services. Sure, you can buy lists, and that's maybe something that you want to consider doing. But you want to make sure that you ask those people if they would like to receive your emails before you send those emails out to them. So that's, again, a really important thing. Make sure that your list is opt-in. Obviously, things like the legality of things, you've got to now have an opt-out clause, which is pretty much a standard. You need to also think about the media. How are you going to actually deliver that email? Is it going to be through Outlook, or are you going to use one of the many different forms of professional email delivery? There are a whole variety of things out there, systems out there that I strongly recommend you have a look at, try out, and see what works and what doesn't, what's right for you. Some of them you can buy and you pay via so much per email. Others you pay a monthly fee, and some's a combination of the two. So it really depends on you and what you want for your business. The next thing to think about is building lists. I like the idea of building my own list through the people that I network with, people that I know, and people that I opt in through my many opt-in strategies and the various websites that I've got. So I can do that through a very simple system. Obviously, the more emails I'm sending out, the better. So I need to make sure I build that database. The other things you can think about in terms of marketing and targeting those emails is who they're going to be sent to. For example, could you form a relationship with another organisation to send your emails out on their behalf? You need to make sure that is from the other company and not from you. It's not that you're going to get their database and send your information out. That is not something that you want to do. But asking another company to send some information out on your behalf is a great way of marketing your business. And obviously, you maybe do the same thing for them in reciprocation. The next thing to think about is the headline. Because this is in all forms of marketing, whether it's advertising, writing letters on the telephone, and certainly in email marketing, the headline is the advert for the advert. And if you think about what happens when you open up an email, you make a decision, don't you? You have a look at the email lands in your Outlook, and you make a decision on whether you're going to read it or not. And that is often based on two things: who it's from and what it's about. So the key here is making sure that your headline is interesting. Now, one of the best headlines that I've ever found is one that I use in referral. It's a great little tool, and the email headline is simply referral from, and then the name of the person. And that nearly always gets open. But you need to make decisions regarding the headline based on your business and your particular strategy. But my number one thing is to keep it interesting, ask a question, make sure it's relevant, and give them a real strong reason to actually open that email up. Once you've done that, then the next thing to think about is, well, what are you going to say? And again, if you think about what you're going to say fairly early on, examine your own behaviour. If it's not interesting, people are not going to read. So the attention is grabbed through the headline. The interest is then the first sentence, the first paragraph, the first couple of paragraphs. We then need to think about the desire. What are we going to get people to do? What is the call to action? What have they got to do? Have they got to sign up to something? Have they got to read further? Have they got to click on a link to somewhere? What is it that they've got to do in order to maximize your particular marketing campaign? So we need to think about the amount of text. I don't know about you, but I've received emails that have got pages of text, 1,000 words, 2,000 words. I've also seen emails that have got 2 words with a link to somewhere. And, all these things work. I'm a big believer that, it doesn't matter how long it is. What matters is it boring? If it's interesting, you can get me to read page after page of interesting text. If it's interesting to me. What you need to do is to make it as short as possible, as long as required. So think about what you're going to say. What about including pictures? What about including video in there? What about links to your website? Because email's a great tool. Instead of getting people to read the email on the actual email in Outlook, get them to read an introduction, which makes them then click onto the main body of the email on your website, and therefore hopefully maybe read the rest of your website and certainly get a better feel of you and your business by visiting your website. What about the most powerful word in advertising, which we all know is free? What could you give free? What could you do to incentivize me to sign up for something, to click on your email, to go forward into a website, or to open up that video that you've now produced on your email system? So what could you do? What could you offer free of charge? I mentioned video a few moments ago, and that's becoming a really big thing, I believe. We use a great video system, that's an online system, and if you want any further details on that, by all means give me a call and I can talk you through and explain what we do and how we use video to enhance our email message. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is offline marketing. And here I'd like to talk to you a little bit about networking. I'm a real big fan of networking. It's a great strategy. It doesn't cost anything. But a lot of people network and they regard it as, basically eating breakfast. They go along to a networking club, whether it's a breakfast club, lunchtime club, evening club, and they go along and they, chat with a few people. They, drink a glass of wine or eat a breakfast. And at the end of it, they haven't really done anything other than collected some business cards. So I believe in looking at this from a professional point of view. And to do that, we need to take a step back and not just think about this one area, which is the networking clubs. Your networking starts with the network of people that you know, and they could be family, friends, employees, people who you used to work with, people you socialize with, people you play golf with, you play tennis with, whatever it is, whatever social activities that you've got, they are the start of your network. They're the people you know. So how can we maximize them? How can we, speak to them and tell them about what you do? Do they know what you do? Do they know that you're looking for new business? Do they know the type of business that you're looking for? Do they know your target market? It's amazing, they say that within 6 degrees of separation, we all know millions of people. Apparently, we all know on average about 60 people. But I think in business, as business owners, we tend to know a lot more than that. So, if your 60 people know 60 people, and those 60 people know 60 people, and so on and so forth, all of a sudden we actually know hundreds of thousands or millions of different people. So we need to make sure we maximize that. When we do go to the networking clubs, the breakfasts and things, we need to have a plan for doing so. How many of those are you going to go to? There's a whole variety of different clubs, and there seem to be a new one springing out every couple of weeks. There's women-only clubs and sort of national networking clubs like the IOD and the Federation of Small Business, and then there's lots of social networking clubs, and then there's the local regional ones. Where I live in Newbury, there's the Newbury Business Group as an example. So we need to make sure that we're maximising those, we're getting the very best return on investment. When we go along there, how do we look? Do we look the part? Do we look as though we are the type of person that you should be dealing with? So we need to think about everything from our clothes to the way we groom ourselves, to how we introduce ourselves, to the number of people that we introduce ourselves to. I've been to networking clubs where people have walked in the door, seen somebody that they know, and then spent a half an hour talking to that person. Is that really the best way of doing it? We need to make sure that we allocate an amount of time to speaking with the people that we need to speak to. We then need to think about what we're going to say, particularly when we get to do our 1 minute of fame, when we get to stand up and say who we are and what we do, and we're hoping then that we're going to get a lot of people coming up to us afterwards and saying, tell me a little bit more. So we need to think carefully about what we're going to say. We need to be different. You imagine, you sat there at a breakfast seminar and there are 50 people in the room. And, what are you thinking about? Well, in my experience, what I'm thinking about is what I'm going to say when I stand up in 2 minutes' time. So if somebody's going to interrupt that pattern of thought, then they need to be good at standing up and influencing me to think about, oh yeah, that's really interesting what they do. I might need to speak to them afterwards. So we need to think about what you're going to say, and even more importantly is how you're going to say it. I'm sure you've all heard in communication, what you say accounts for about 8% of how we communicate. 37% is how we say it, and even more important than that is our body language. The way we look, the way we gesture, our eye contact, the way we move our bodies is really, really important in influencing people to do what we want them to do. So, whilst standing up and thinking about what you're going to say is important, it's really important how you say it. My last point on this is to have a written plan. How many leads do you require? How many meetings do you need to attend in order to produce that number of leads? And what is your target for it? How much is it going to cost you in terms of time, money and effort? Because without those, you don't really know whether it's working or not. So you need to make sure that you, again, quantify what's working and what's not throughout your networking plan. I mentioned that the final section this month is sales. And I thought long and hard about what to talk about today in terms of winning more business. And I decided to talk about one of the, I believe, most important areas of selling. And that is something I call criteria elicitation. Now, you're probably thinking, that sounds really impressive, Steve, but what does it actually mean? What it means is that most salespeople, when they're selling things, selling a product, selling a service, do so based on their criteria. Let's say, for example, I was selling cars and someone comes into my garage, my showroom, and I make a judgment about that person that they will probably be buying based on price. And so I pitch my whole sales presentation based on value for money and how great the sale is and how good it is from a price point of view, how much value for money they're getting. But I've never bothered to find out their criteria. What is their criteria for buying things? So if I just go through a little role play with myself here, literally, explaining how I would do that. The first thing I would ask is, tell me, when you're thinking of buying a car, what sort of things are important to you? To which someone may say, well, it's the model's key, and the size of the engine, and the price is obviously important, and the fact that there's plenty of room in the back because I've got a fairly big family, and I want something that's a little bit sporty as well. So what I've done there is I've ascertained their criteria. Now the next thing to do is to get the criteria in the right order. Now why would I do that? Well, I do that because I would then focus on what's important to them and not what I think is important to them. So for example, I'd say something like, so tell me, out of all those things that you just mentioned, which one's the most important to you? And they may say, well, it's the size of the car, or they may say, the model of it's really important, or they may say, well, it's the price. Now, dependent on the order, that is where I will focus my future presentation. So if they said, for example, well, it's the model, I would obviously then ask them what model you're looking for and what size of engine, and I would make sure that hopefully I was talking to them about the car that they wanted. When they then spoke about the back of the car and there'd be plenty of room in there, I would probably physically get them to sit in there and make sure that they were happy and that they felt as though that car was the right car for them, and so on and so forth. So what I'm doing here is I'm going through their criteria, and each one I'm literally ticking off one at a time, making sure that they're happy with each specific criteria. Once I've done that, I've gone through the whole lot, I need to ask a question, and that question is, would you like to go ahead? I need to close the sale. So two things can happen at that point. One, they could say, well, yes, I'd like to go ahead, which is obviously the preferred response. And the other one would be, well, I'm not really sure, because there is something that they're still not clear about. So what I would advise you do then is to go back and say something like this. In order to make sure that I've done my job correctly, do you mind if I ask you a question? 99% of people are going to say yes to that particular question. What is it that you're not quite sure of is the next question. And they will go back and they will tell you either one of those criteria, or they may tell you a criteria which they've not actually mentioned. The next thing to do is to make sure that this is the last objection. So if they said, for example, well, to be honest, it's the price. I'd say something like, well, I understand that and it is a considerable investment. However, can I just ask you, if we managed to sort the price out for you, would you be interested in going ahead? Because the last thing you want to do is to sort the price out by, spreading it over an amount of time or giving them a discount or whatever it is, and then saying, well, actually, yeah, there's another reason as well. So what you're doing is, within that criteria, you're limiting it to one specific area. And that's it, really. That's criteria elicitation. Get an understanding of their criteria so you know exactly what's making them make the decision. Get it in the right order. Go through it one step at a time to make sure that they're happy. When they are, you tick the box that they're happy with that. At the end, you ask for the sale. If they're not sure, then you just simply go back and ask them what it is they're not sure about. They will then tell you, and then you've got a choice of doing one or two things. You either remove that objection or you outweigh it. So that's literally it for this month. I hope you enjoyed the CD. Mostly, I hope you do something with it. What are you going to do in your business to improve your business between now and the next Raise Your Game program? This has been Steve Mills. Thanks ever so much for listening, and have a fantastic month. Thank you.
There you go. I hope you enjoyed that. It was interesting for me. I was sort of sat there listening, doing a little bit of work, to be honest, while it was on. But I was sort of listening to myself, which is a bit of a weird thing to do, I know. But it just reminded me, I probably recorded that, certainly 4 or 5 years ago. But it's still as valuable today as it was then, I think. I particularly loved remembering criteria elicitation. That's an incredibly powerful tool, because we do all make our own minds up about why somebody, they didn't buy it because it was too expensive, or, they didn't buy it because it wasn't right, or whatever. But getting an understanding of the criteria that somebody uses to make a buying decision about anything is really important. And it's really good for them as well, because they don't really understand, what's your criteria for buying a new computer. You might sort of know, but you couldn't, I don't think, probably be able to list the top 10 things that you're looking for, get them in order of priority, and really understand exactly, so that you make the best buying decision for you. So there's another use of buying criteria, actually, when you're going to buy something, as well as when you're selling. So anyway, I'm going to end the session now. What I'd suggest you do is, if you want to know more from me, if you want any help from me, it'd be great to meet with you. That would be the next step, really. So if you go to my website, which is www.stevemills.co, that's .co, there's a page along the navigation banner at the top called Results Meeting. If you go onto that page and scroll down, and there are several different types of meetings that you can book with me. You can book a telephone meeting, you can book an online meeting using zoom.com, you can book a meeting in our office. But go there and book a meeting. One thing I want to promise you in that meeting, this is not about me trying to sell you our services. This meeting is what I call an awareness meeting. It's getting an understanding of your marketing. That's what I want to do. And at the same time, I will endeavour to provide you with, let's say, just a few tips and ways in which you can improve what you're already doing. And I do that for two reasons. One, to try and help you, and two, to demonstrate my expertise, which I've accrued in over 25 years now. It's actually 25 years of running my business in 2020, so really looking forward to that anniversary. But obviously I've been in marketing for quite a long time before that. And that's it. So thank you ever so much for listening. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks very much.